He's super cute. Do you just love getting to be home with them all the time? Yeah, I do. I love it.
Nightbitch is a compendium of delights. From the off, we're thrown into a world not far from our own, yet at the same time filled with the unexpected, the hilarious, the downright devilish. It's sassy, it's smart, it's sharp, it's also doggy, magical, curious, at times horrific. It's a comedy horror wrapped up in magical realism. It's a box of treats and... But wait, instead of me waffling on, let's listen to Mother.
Nightbitch is, it's about a lot of things. It's about motherhood, parenthood, relationships, communication. It deals with identity, transformation, but it follows Mother through this period of her life where she finds herself alone and isolated with her toddler son, having to let go of her identity from the past and not yet finding a new identity. And she taps into sort of this feral, ancient mysticism to connect with her inner self and find herself in a new way.
It's also about an artist, a creative, who gives up painting. Now that resonates with me. I've gone through situations where time and circumstance meant I couldn't paint, where the sight of cerulean, ultramarine and crimson in piles of pigment powder would make me stop and drool, rave or weep. That moment when we just have to see colour, touch colour, dive into colour, consume colour. Yes, now I'm ranting, but you get the idea. Not unlike Dickensian street urchins outside the shop window peering in at all the pink and white sugar mice inside. To be deprived of the means to create with colour, to display your love of colour and what it can do to the senses, to be deprived of that opportunity for whatever reason, well, it causes a raw hunger in the creative stomach of the artist. And this is what the protagonist is going through.
You're an artist, right?
Well, I used to be.
Wow.
But that feels like a lifetime ago. So
Yeah,
totally.
definitely.
We get it. I used to be a stripper.
The before times.
She attempts to play paint with her child as a means to an end. She gets to paint too, with some fun, a bit of a bump, ouch, right on the tailbone, and a lot of mess to clean up after. It all gets, well, it gets hairy.
Again. Oh, and I'm pretty sure I'm turning into a dog.
You're so funny.
The tension grows. There is the almost requisite face-down scene between the parents with the expected line, "I need space."
If you wake him up, I will rip your throat out.
Okay, for what it's worth. I would kill to stay home with him every day.
But this isn't a film about a relationship on the rocks and progressing into decline. One of the really cool aspects of the story for me is how together the couple are, as a unit, or as a family. They really do want to make it work. Sure, there's the pressure, and will they or won't they make it to the end? But it's more about the transition, the transformation, both nightly as a dog and creatively, of the mother as she grows into this other being, the one who howls at the moon, hunts rabbits and makes art, all while rearing her cub.
I am an animal.
So, how did it all start?
I was sent a copy of the novel before it was published from Sue Nagel, who was at Annapurna Pictures, and she was like, how would you feel about developing this with us? And I read it and kind of devoured it, which is actually what I did, but it sounds like I'm saying that as a weird pun for Nightbitch, but I devoured it and really loved the characters' point of view and Rachel's take on narration. It was just such a unique voice inside of a novel and a unique narrative, and that was the first thing that pulled me in. And then of course the subject matter and the way she portrayed Mother, the relationship between mother and son and mother and husband, it just it felt very identifiable to me.
Nobody in this family can clean their own butts.
And you know, when we're thinking about someone that we want to do this, Mari was like, I was like, let's go to Mari. And of course she was like, everyone's like, no, Mari's not reading anything, she just had a baby. And I was like, I think she might have a very unique relationship with this. And it seemed like it was a great place, you know. Aside from that, I just love her talent with tone and her visual approach to storytelling. I just thought she would be such a great fit with the magical realism. So we called Mari and we had a really long conversation, and we were really, really blessed to get her on board. And really, I think her first pass of the script that I read is what we shot. I mean, it was tight. She nailed it.
Do you ever feel like the big secret is that we are gods?
So Amy Adams' company and Annapurna first optioned the book Nightbitch by Rachel Yoder before it was published, actually, and sent me the manuscript. And Amy sent it to me saying, I would love to work with you. I have no idea if this piques your interest, but I found this book very moving. Take a look and see what you think. And I read it, and it was post-pandemic. During the pandemic, I was pregnant with my second child. I had moved out of the city to live in the woods. I was raising my 2 kids. My husband had gone back to work, and I was sort of losing my mind with the isolation. And this book spoke to me on so many levels. I just felt so seen by it. It's like when you really see a piece of media that feels like it represents you, it's like the most cathartic thing in the world. And I felt so moved by how my experience of motherhood felt so reflected in Rachel's writing, and how she was able to just capture the real feeling of both the complexities of the feelings of the joy and love and the monotony and the boredom and the feeling that your brain is not your own and your body is not your own, and you don't know if you'll ever be the same again. And so I just knew I had to adapt it.
Motherhood, it changes you and connects you to some primal urges.
I feel like I'm stuck.
Make up a plan.
I love the mythology in the film. We are introduced at the library to A Field Guide to Magical Women by one Wanda White, a mysterious author that the mother, search as she might, cannot discover more about. The book is an academic work that catalogues such beings as bird women and weir mothers, hybrid creatures, half human, half bird or beast. The mother begins to wonder if she is one of these, and writes to the author. Speaking of hybrids, the transformation scenes in this film are a tad different from your average Hammer horror.
We were thinking about the transformation in the movie. We kept looking to other movies and transformations and realizing that in most kind of body horror transformation movies, the transformation is very painful. It's like a ripping open, or like something poking out of you, or like your skin being torn off, and it feels awful. And I realized this transformation needed to feel good. It needed to feel exuberant and like a catharsis, and like everything is finally coming to fruition. And it had a bit of an ecstasy to it. So it was, how do we change this trajectory so that it feels good? The unlock for me was realizing that we could, I chose this idea that she's digging in her garden. It felt like it made sense for the story. She's sort of been excavating and digging through her past and her own mother and her grandmother, and thinking through her past life as an artist. She's sort of digging through her past to try and understand who she is currently. And at the same time, she's physically digging in her lawn. And that led me to how to build the transformation sequences out of that digging.
Questions. I have questions. Like, those dogs, were they actually the other mothers from the Tots group? Was one of them the librarian? Sadly, the dogs in question were not available for comment. I just don't keep enough dog biscuits in the house. Another question.
You know, I think there's sometimes some misconceptions about the process of adaptation. It's never a one-to-one translation. You know, it's not just taking this one book and translating it into a movie. It's much more like, how would you take a painting of something and turn it into a sculpture? It has to change forms and change mediums. And so a lot of that process for me, because I love adapting, is finding source material that I absolutely adore, getting to know it so deeply that it almost feels inside of me, and then letting it shift and grow into something new that has a different form, that takes a different timing, that has a different shape. You know, like something in her book where she would constantly describe many days that went on and on that had similarities. I created into a montage where we're having these percussive elements, and there's hash browns and going to the park and a swing and a this and a that. It's like physicalizing this idea and this concept and finding ways to make that physical. as well as just the overall shape of the story. So it's a tough process. Sometimes it means letting go of parts of the book that you might have loved, parts of the book I loved, because you can't keep everything, and letting it grow into something new.
My wish list. Magical realism. It comes in playful spoonfuls throughout the film, from Mother's first unnerving discovery of her tail to her running at night with the pack. I would happily watch Dollops more of that. A little howling at the moon. The art. Because it's also about the creative, struggling on her artist's way, I would have dearly loved to spend more time with the creative process of her paintings, but that's just me. It was satisfying to see great and colourful canvases adorning the walls, even though the sense of achievement was a little washed out by other new difficulties and discoveries. The film has its own questions too, which the mother attempts to answer. Does she want to be a mother? Can she be an artist? Can she be both? Self-doubt, struggle and achievement, this is the narrative path, one that is told to us in countless ways in movie land, but rarely so uniquely. It did feel a tad repetitive at the beginning, understandably, as we're following the mother's daily routine, and we are, I believe, meant to feel almost as homicidal as she does. It is a question, as always, of where to draw that fine line between establishing a setup and overemphasis. I get where the direction was coming from, to make us, the viewers, participate rather than passively observe. We are meant to share the feeling of endless, remorseless time loop of rearing an overactive child. A little trimming here and there might help tighten up the movie, which for some of the audience felt a little long. Aside from that, I found it sharp, smart and smoothly filmed. The mythology and magic realism were welcome ingredients, nicely balanced with the dark, growling, almost rabid humour. Ha ha. A colourful, mostly fast-paced film about listening to your instincts. And a shout-out to the cinematographers. There are some wonderful wide shots in there. A feel of autumnal golds and ochre yellows, which flourishes into kaleidoscopic
Do you ever feel like the big secret is that we are God?
I think some of my favorite responses are when people say, I'm not a mother, or I don't have kids yet, but this movie made me think about my mom and I called her right afterwards. Or I think there is an invisible labor to motherhood, particularly, that we don't really talk about or acknowledge often. There's often sacrifices that go along with being a mom. I know there are choices I've made along my path as a director that I wouldn't have made if I wasn't a mom, good and bad. And pretty much we all spend our time as moms. It's a pretty thankless job, but feeling seen is really meaningful. So I'm hoping this makes people feel seen.
We fucking create life. We are so powerful. What the fuck? I could crush a walnut with my vagina. I am a woman. I am an animal. I am Nightbitch.
You're so dirty. Where did you go?
I am her run.